The first day of October came quietly. I woke up to a soft gray light that filled my small room outside the window. The city looked calm, covered in a thin mist. The trees along the street had already started to change their colors. Green turning into gold, gold into deep red. I could hear the faint sound of rain falling, gentle and steady, as if the world was whispering good morning. I made tea and stood by the window, holding the warm cup in my hands. The air smelled fresh and a little sad, the smell of wet leaves and cold stone. Down below, the street was shiny from the rain, and yellow leaves stuck to the pavement like pieces of an old painting. Autumn in the city always felt different from other seasons. It was slower, softer. Everything seemed to move with more thought, more care. Even people walked differently. Not in a hurry, but quietly, as if they were afraid to break the silence of falling leaves. I decided to go outside. The rain had almost stopped. Leaving only a few drops hanging from the edges of the roofs, I put on my old coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped into the street. The air touched my face, cool and damp. I breathed deeply, feeling that special smell of autumn, rain, smoke, and the sweetness of falling leaves. Cars passed slowly, their tires making soft sounds on the wet road. Somewhere far away, a church bell rang, echoing through the fog. I walked without a clear direction, just following the rhythm of the city. The trees along the sidewalk formed a golden tunnel, their branches still heavy with drops of rain. Leaves fell one by one, quiet and gentle. Landing on the ground or on my shoulders, I brushed them off, smiling a little. There was something comforting in this quiet decay, in how nature let go of summer without fear. The leaves didn't fight the wind. They just fell soft and certain, trusting the earth to catch them. I wished I could let go of things that easily. As I walked, I passed the park near the river. The benches were wet, empty except for a few pigeons. The path was covered with leaves, red, yellow, brown, like a soft carpet. I stepped on them slowly, listening to the soft crunch beneath my feet. The river moved quietly, its surface dark and smooth. Mist floated above it, and small ripples appeared where drops of rain touched the water. The bridge nearby looked like it was fading into the fog, its lamps glowing faintly through the mist. I stopped by the railing and looked down at the water. My reflection appeared there, pale and a little blurred. I remembered other autumn mornings from years ago, when I was younger, and life felt endless. I used to come to this same river with friends after school. We would sit on the edge, throwing small stones into the water, talking about dreams we didn't yet understand. Now the faces from those days lived only in memory. Some friends had moved away, some had families, some I had simply lost touch with time. I thought it was like this river, always moving, never waiting, taking pieces of us with it. I continued walking along the path. The rain began again, softly at first, then a little stronger. I pulled up my hood but didn't hurry. The rain felt light on my coat, cold on my cheeks, but it was a good kind of cold, clean, honest. The park smelled richer now. Earth, rain, wet wood. A few crows flew across the gray sky, their calls echoing between the trees. The sound felt both lonely and beautiful. At the far end of the park, I found a small cafe that I used to visit years ago. Its windows were fogged from the warmth inside. I hesitated for a moment, then went in. The bell above the door rang softly as I entered. The air inside was warm, filled with the smell of coffee and cinnamon. I took off my coat and sat by the window, where I could still watch the rain outside. The cafe looked almost the same as I remembered. Wooden tables, soft yellow lights, the quiet hum of old jazz music playing somewhere near the counter. There were only a few people inside. A man reading a newspaper, a couple sharing a cake, a young girl typing on her laptop. I ordered tea and watched the steam rise from the cup when it arrived outside. The rain made small circles on the puddles. Leaves floated across them, turning slowly in the wind. I thought of how many autumns I had already seen, each one different, yet always carrying the same feeling, a mix of peace and gentle sadness. Maybe it was the way autumn reminded us that everything changes, and that beauty often comes from things that don't last. When I was younger, I used to think of autumn as an ending. Now I see it as a pause, a soft in-between where life slows down just enough for us to listen. The tea warmed my hands. I leaned my head against the window, feeling the vibration of rain on the glass. The city outside looked like a watercolor painting, blurred edges, soft colors, and quiet motion. A bus passed by, splashing through a puddle. A woman walked quickly under a red umbrella. A child in a yellow coat jumped into a pile of leaves, laughing. All these small moments, I thought, are what make a city alive, not its buildings or lights, but its people, its breathing rhythm. I sat there for a long time, just watching the clock above the counter tick softly, marking the slow passing of minutes. When I finally stood up to leave, the rain had stopped again. The air felt lighter, washed clean. I put on my coat and stepped outside. The sky was still gray, but now it had a calm brightness to it. That quiet light that only comes after rain. The wet leaves shone like gold on the pavement. I walked toward the river again, taking the longer way home. As I passed an old bookstore, I noticed the window display worn books, postcards, and a small sign that said, "Autumn Reads." I smiled inside. The lights were warm and I could see someone arranging books on a shelf. I almost went in, but decided to keep walking. Some moments I thought are better left as pictures in the mind. I crossed the bridge again. The lamps were now brighter against the fading day. The river below reflected the light like long ribbons of gold. I stopped in the middle of the bridge and looked out. The trees along the bank were now darker, their branches moving slowly in the wind. Leaves continued to fall, carried by the air like gentle memories. I thought about time again, how it moved, how it changed everything without asking. I remembered the faces of people I once loved, the laughter shared in autumn parks, the letters I used to write, the dreams I once had. There was a kind of sweetness in those memories. Even the sad ones, they reminded me that I had lived, that I had felt deeply, that every season had left something inside me. The city lights came on one by one as evening fell. Windows glowed in soft yellow. The sound of footsteps echoed from the sidewalk somewhere. A dog barked and the smell of roasted chestnuts drifted from a nearby cart. I walked slowly back home. The air was cool again, but my heart felt warm. The streets shimmered under the streetlights, each puddle reflecting a small piece of the world. When I reached my building, I stood for a moment before going in. The tree in front of the door had lost most of its leaves. A few still hung there, trembling in the wind, their colors deep and beautiful. Inside my apartment, the air felt still and familiar. I lit a small lamp by the window, made another cup of tea, and sat down outside. The rain started again, not heavy, just soft and steady. The sound filled the room, gentle and endless. I opened the window a little to let the cool air and the smell of wet leaves and stone mixed with the warmth of the room. I took out an old photo album from the shelf, something I hadn't opened in years. The pages were full of faces and places that felt both near and far, smiles frozen in time, people I hadn't seen in so long. One picture showed me and a friend sitting on a park bench surrounded by fallen leaves. I couldn't even remember who took it, but I remembered the feeling laughter, wind in my hair, the smell of rain in the air. I ran my fingers over the photo and smiled. The years between then and now felt soft, like a distance filled with light. I thought of how autumn always brings memories to the surface, not in sharp pain, but in gentle waves. It reminds me of what is past, but also of what still remains. The beauty of small things, the warmth of ordinary moments, the comfort of being alive. Outside, the rain continued to fall, the city lights blurred behind the drops on the window. Somewhere a train passed in the distance, its sound deep and slow. I closed the album and looked outside again. The night had settled quietly over the city. The rain sparkled in the streetlights and the air seemed to hum softly with life. I thought of tomorrow, another morning, another walk through golden leaves, another cup of tea by the window. The seasons would keep turning, the world would keep moving, and I would keep watching, listening, remembering. Because that is what autumn teaches best, to love the passing moment, to find warmth in the cold, and to let beauty fall gently, like the leaves that never fight the wind.